Welcome back to my channel. I am Nichar and I'm glad to share with you the second part of our video lesson on figures of speech. If you haven't seen yet the first part, just click the link right here to catch up. In a previous video, we talked about the 7 common figures of speech. Do you still remember them? Good. Let us recall them using the acronym SHAMPOO. The 7 common figures of speech are simile, hyperbole, alliteration, metaphor, personification, onomatopoeia, and oxymoron. In this video, we are going to talk about the other types of figures of speech, such as anaphora, epistrophe, assonance, consonants, paradox, and juxtaposition. So what are you waiting for? Let's dive in. Let us discuss each type of figures of speech in pair using comparison and contrast for better understanding. Our first pair is anaphora and epistrophe. Do you know what is common to both of them? These figures of speech use repetition of the same sounds or words. First, what is anaphora? As a figure of speech, anaphora is the repetition of a word or phrase at the beginning of successive sentences or at the start of consecutive sentences. Anaphora is the deliberate repetition of the first part of the sentence in order to achieve an artistic effect. Are you familiar with the famous speech of Martin Luther King Jr. entitled, "I Have a Dream"? His speech is a perfect example of anaphora. Let's take a look at these examples. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, I have a dream that one day even the state of Mississippi, I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day down in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted. In his speech, the phrase, "I have a dream," was repeated 8 times at the beginning of 8 consecutive sentences. Apart from this, King had used many more anaphora in his speech. Let's have one more example. Have you heard the song "Every Breath You Take" by the Police Band? Even songwriters use anaphora. Every breath you take, every move you make, every bound you break, every step you take, I'll be watching you. The word "every" was repeated 4 times to start 4 consecutive lines in the lyrics of the song. Moving on to the next type of figure of speech, which is the opposite of anaphora, epistrophe. It is the repetition of a word or words at the end of consecutive phrases, clauses, or sentences. Let's take a look at these examples of epistrophe. May God bless you. May God keep you.
May he make his face to shine upon you.
Face the tone, for the tone, own the tone. In the given examples, the words you and tone were repeated at the end of phrases, clauses, or sentences. Corinthians in the New Testament also includes examples of epistrophe. In 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 11 of King James Version, it says, and I quote, "When I was a child, I spake as a child, I understood as a child, and I taught as a child." So, these are examples of epistrophe. Again, let us compare and contrast anaphora and epistrophe. Both figures of speech use repetition of same sounds or words. However, the repetition in anaphora occurs at the beginning of consecutive sentences, while the repetition in epistrophe takes place at the end of phrases, clauses, or sentences. Alright, let us look into the next pair of figures of speech. We have assonance and consonants. What do you think is common between assonance and consonants? These figures of speech use repetition of identical or similar sounds. And what makes the difference? Assonance is the repetition of identical or similar vowel sounds. On the other hand, consonance is the repetition of consonant sounds in the middle or at the end of words. Let's take a look at their examples. Assonance is the figurative term used to refer to the repetition of a vowel sound in a line of text or poetry. The words have to be close enough together for the repetition to be noticeable. Let's take a look at some examples of assonance. The light of the fire is a sight. In this example, do you notice the repetition of the long I sound in the words light, fire, and sight? Great! Let's have another example. Go slow over the road. Do you notice the repetition of the long O sound in the example? Good. Let's have one last example. Sally sells seashells beside the seashore. What do you notice in the given example? Do you notice the repetition of the short E and long E sounds? That's nice. Let's have examples of consonants this time. Mike likes his new bag. Do you notice the repetition of consonant sounds K in the middle of the words my, like, and bag? That's great. Let's have one more example. He stood on the road and cried. In this example, do you notice the repetition of consonant sounds T at the end of each word? Good. This time, let's take a look at our last pair of figures of speech that we'll be learning in this video. Paradox and juxtaposition. What do you think is common to both of them? These figures of speech, paradox and juxtaposition, involve two contradictory elements. A paradox as a figure of speech is a sentence or a phrase that appears contradictory but implies some kind of truth. Let's take a look at these examples. Nobody goes to the restaurant. It's too crowded. Do you think it is logically contradictory but true? Yes, it is. If nobody goes to that restaurant, then why it is too crowded? It is seemingly contradictory and is yet perhaps true. Since the place is too crowded, then you or people might not want to go there anymore. Paradox is a combination of words or statements that makes the reader pause to think deeper. Let's have this example. Save money by spending it. How can you save money by spending it? Come to think of it, saving is the opposite of spending, right? The example is logically contradictory, but it is true. We can earn money by spending it. There are 10 simple tips shared by Miriam Cadwell on how spending more can actually save you money. If you are interested in this, just click this link right here. Here are some thought-provoking examples of paradox. If I know one thing, it's that I know nothing. Men work together whether they work together or apart. The more you learn, the more you realize how little you know. Finally, we're down to the last type of figures of speech that we'll be learning in this video. When a writer places two contrasting concepts, events, or people directly side by side in a sentence or paragraph, he or she is using juxtaposition. Let's take a look at these examples of juxtaposition. In the classic movie The Godfather, when baptism scenes were juxtaposed with murder scenes. In this example, there are two contrasting events, murder and baptism scenes. Baptism is a sacred or holy sin, while murder is a profane, ungodly, and unholy sin. A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens is another classic example. In this story, Dickens writes, "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times." Dickens used contrasting elements to demonstrate the concept of highs and lows or ups and downs of life. Making a mountain out of a molehill is another example of juxtaposition. A mountain is huge, while a molehill is tiny. Let's have one last example of juxtaposition. They say, when the cat is away, the mice will play. This juxtaposition highlights the contrast between two animals, cat and mice, that represent the characters of a person in authority and those under the person in authority. This juxtaposition manifests the truthfulness of the concept that in reality, people will naturally take advantage of the absence of someone in authority to do as they like. Alright, we're finally done discussing the other types of figures of speech. Let us now wrap up what we have discussed and learned in this video. We have Anaphora versus Epistrophe. These figures of speech use repetition of sounds and words. The repetition in Anaphora occurs at the beginning of successive sentences, while the repetition in Epistrophe takes place at the end of consecutive phrases, clauses, or sentences. We also talk about assonance versus consonants. These figures of speech use repetition of identical or similar sound. And what makes the difference? Assonance is the repetition of identical or similar vowel sound. On the other hand, consonance is the repetition of consonant sounds in the middle or at the end of words. Finally, we have paradox versus juxtaposition. These figures of speech involve two contradictory elements. A paradox is a statement that may seem contradictory but can be true, while juxtaposition is a literary device that places two things side by side for a contrasting effect. Now it's time for an activity. Let's have a quick quiz. Please get ready with your paper and pen. Which figure of speech was used in these sentences? Timer starts now. Are you done? Great! Let's see how you did it. Let's check your answers. Which figure of speech was used in these sentences? I only message those who do not message. This is paradox. Try as I might, the kite did not fly. This is an example of assonance, repetition of the long I sound. Number 3, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. This is an example of juxtaposition. Number 4, government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. What's your answer? This is an example of epistrophe. Number 5, the zoo was amazing, especially the lizards and chimpanzees. Okay, this one is consonance, the repetition of consonant sound Z. And the last, you better watch out, you better not cry, you better not pout. Obviously, this is an example of anaphora. Did you get all the correct answers? Congratulations! Once again, thank you for learning with me. If you haven't subscribed yet to my channel, don't forget to like and subscribe for more educational videos or free lessons. Bye!